Hello, I'm David Caputo, Professor of Political Science at Pace University in New York City, and I would like to talk with you today as part of the Road to the White House MOOC. I want to talk specifically about what some of the key issues may be in the fall campaign. I think it's important that we realize that most campaigns, most general elections either come down in terms of international issues or come down in terms of domestic issues. And I think that in this particular case, we have a number of issues which cross those boundaries, and I'll come to that in just a few minutes. So let's talk specifically about what some of the issues, major issues, are likely to be. Certainly one, at least in the early part of the campaign, has been the Affordable Health Care Act, where Donald Trump has said he'll replace it. Hillary Clinton has said she'll continue to work with it and to modify it to make it better. Affordable Health Care Act is clearly going to be a potential lightning rod for the campaign. It is a litmus test for many conservatives that if you aren't for abolishing it, you truly are not conservative. For many liberals, they have, such as Bernie Sanders, they argue that it puts too much an emphasis on insurance companies and it should be replaced with a single payer issue. I think it may become an important issue. There are parts of that legislation which many Americans, if not most Americans, like, and that's especially being able to be insured even if you have an existing condition, and secondly, for many parents, being able to have their child stay on their coverage to a later age than was the case in the past. So that's certainly an issue that will be important going forward. Another issue, obviously, that will be important is immigration. Immigration is tied also to the issue of national defense, especially with the discussion about the Syrian immigrants and other immigrants from the Middle East conflict, whether or not we're letting terrorists in through immigration policy. Donald Trump's argument that he's going to build a wall and secure the borders, that's going to be an issue going forward. Jobs and trade, okay, very important. Trump signaled in his April 26th victory speech that NAFTA was the single worst thing that destroyed this country, pointed out that Bill Clinton was responsible for NAFTA and said that Hillary had to take that responsibility also. So this is clearly a powerful argument that is being made in terms of turning the clock back, renegotiating these international treaties and so forth, trade agreements, so that what happens is that the American worker is more protected, and as Mr. Trump says, he'll be bringing jobs back. I think a third potential possible, or fourth actually, issue is this whole issue about the environment and especially climate change. It may take the form in terms of opposition or support to fracking and what it means. Also, the two candidates, the two frontrunners and presumed nominees have very different views. Mrs. Clinton argues that global change, environmental change, and climate warming is very real. Trump argues that it is not, and is something that we do not have to pay particular attention to at this point. Another interesting one domestically is police-public interaction. We see that not just in terms of Black Lives Matter, but also from others who argue that, wait, we've gone too far in terms of undercutting police in terms of what they do with law enforcement and so forth. So that'll be an issue. Gun control, gun legislation will be an issue, especially on background checks, and also whether or not you can sue gun manufacturers. I think that will be an important set of issues. And then one that hasn't received as much attention as perhaps it needs to be, and that is the whole issue of government spending. Remember, we're running a 19 to 20 trillion, not million, trillion dollar deficit. And to balance that would take years without draconian results. And also, can it be balanced without changing some of the entitlement programs, especially Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security? So that will be an important issue, I would argue, and that's sort of a capstone, because when Donald Trump argues that he's going to make America great again, and he's going to do X, Y, and Z, all of which involve spending a lot of money, where is he going to get that money? Is it going to come from other programs? Is it going to come from a tax increase? Where exactly is he going to get that funding? Same thing for Mrs. Clinton. She's going to have to defend her views for some of the social programs that she wants to have. Where are those funds going to come from? And are we going to tackle the question of the balanced budget? Another issue clearly will be Planned Parenthood and abortion. This also is a litmus test for many conservatives, and I think here we'll see a marked difference between the candidates in terms of their position on this. They both have to hold their base on this position, so it'll be interesting. Another one will be the Supreme Court nominees. Whether or not the current nominee gets hearing or not is very unlikely at this point. That will become an issue, but more important is the broader issue about the politicalization of the Supreme Court. If we talk about in an actual campaign about I'll appoint justices of a certain type versus not, we're clearly politicizing the court, continuing to politicize the court, and which only makes it more likely then that the court will act in a political manner rather than a different way. The last one I would just mention is the whole issue of defense and whether or not what should be the America's role around the world. The Republican position in the past has been America has to be involved at times. Democratic position has also been the same. It depends where Donald Trump and Mrs. Clinton finally stake their claims as to what they think ought to be done. So I think this is a list of some possible issues. You should be thinking about what issues are most important to you and what issues you think are issues that need to come up and need to be discussed. There's one I would just mention. I always enjoy mentioning this in my class, and that is, will the issue of legalization of marijuana become a national issue? So far it has been a regional issue in the state of Colorado and Washington in 2012, both passing referendums which permit the legalization of marijuana. National opinion polls have now shifted from a small to a small percentage, about 52, 53% in some of the polling that I have seen, who now favor legalization of marijuana at the national level. So whether or not that will become an issue remains to be seen. The final point I would just raise is, will this campaign be fought on domestic issues, or will it be decided on the issue of national defense and our role in the world? Clearly, if it's domestic issues, you can expect Donald Trump to hammer away at anything that he thinks would give him an advantage about job creation. Okay, so he'd be anti-trade agreement. He would be for the renegotiation. He would be for anti-immigrant. He would be anti-change, making immigration more open because it would take jobs away in his estimation. He would be for a variety of other things associated with domestic issues. Mrs. Clinton, on the other hand, will probably take the position that we have solved, or we're in the process of solving many of these problems, and now's the time not to deviate, but to go ahead and try to point out that Donald Trump's positions are extreme and impossible to get done. One of the questions will also be asked is, we've heard a lot about electability. I think we're going to hear a lot about governability in the election, in terms of who's fit to govern and who has the best chance of being able to move Congress and to be able to move American public opinion. So look for a very interesting campaign. You may want to jot down what you think the 3 most important issues are to you. And then when the campaign is underway, ask which candidate is answering your issues, and does that make a difference? Does that change your opinion of those candidates? Okay, so keep that in mind. Thank you, and there'll be another lecture or 2 before the end of the semester. One will be on where we are after April 26th going forward, and another one will be on the Senate and House battles. So this basically concludes the lectures for spring of 2016 and Road to the White House. Thank you for joining me. Okay.